so much for tuning in to today's episode of Inside Austin's Agenda. I'm your host, Grace Reader. Today we are joined by Travis County Judge Andy Brown. Judge, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you all have a lot going on, one thing after another. First and foremost, let's start with, you all are working through your budget process right now. Talk about where you all are at with that.
Yeah, so the budget office has spent the last several months, really since they did the last budget, preparing the preliminary budget. And so that's what we've tentatively approved that so far. We're still mired deeply in salary considerations and what to do for county employees. But the bulk of the preliminary budget is set other than salaries.
Can you talk about some of the things in that preliminary budget, aside from salaries, that you're really excited made it into the budget this year?
Yeah, the biggest one is the mental health diversion efforts. We've got good funding in there, ongoing funding to help us once we get the design and the place for it. So we've hired a company to help design it, some architects and other folks that are experts in this area. They're working with the medical school and the police chief, health and human services, different departments in the county to come up with that. And so we've got a good amount of funding to help with the construction of it, but also help with the operations of it. It will need more money, so we hope still to partner with other funding sources like Integral Care and Central Health and others, but it's got a good start.
I've been talking about that project a lot, but for folks who have not been following along, talk about what that mental health diversion center is going to be.
Yeah, so right now our jail, we've got a little over 2,300 people in the jail today. Over half of those people, by any measure, have a significant unmet mental health need that they probably would not have interacted with law enforcement if they didn't have that unmet need. So the concept is something they've done in Lubbock, in Tucson, Nashville, a few other places around the country to provide additional mental health resources to the community, to folks who are interacting with the criminal justice system, but also just folks that might need that help. And so what I think this will look like is a psychiatric hospital, so some number of beds that is actually inpatient, where people are forced to be there to receive treatment, whether or not they want to. It would also have a mental health diversion center part, which is like the pilot that we have running right now with Integral Care, which is more voluntary. And then it would have other things that this design team is going to work up. But we've seen good examples of this elsewhere. The idea, again, is to make the county a safer place and to get people the resources they need and to reduce spending in the jail and in the criminal justice system, and instead invest more in mental health.
You talked a little bit about the conversation you all are still having about budget and salary. What are you all working through?
Yeah, so on the salary piece, the state has a history of limiting what the income for counties can be. In my opinion, there's a lot of things that the county is doing, this mental health diversion center being number one, that the state should be doing. But we take on a lot of costs that the state does not meet their burdens on. And so we try to pay our workers a good wage. We try to give them good benefits because we want top quality people working in this public service thing. So that means engineers, if you want to get a review of your building permit. It means lawyers on both sides of the system if you're going through the criminal legal system. It means our parks department, maintaining great parks in the county and things like that. And so the struggle is, with the limited money that we have coming in from the state, how do we reward the people who work here, encourage others to come work here, and make a career out of it? So not just at the beginning level, but all across their time here at the county. So the county did a market salary survey to look at what other counties pay, and we're trying to digest all of that into the limited budget we have to make this a good place for employees.
So moving forward, what is that process going to look like? Are you all going to have to make some cuts somewhere to maybe give some raises? What will that look like?
So we normally would have decided by now that question. Like yesterday in court, we did markup, and usually we will just have the answer to, are we doing just an across-the-board raise for people or doing something more specialized? The HR staff asked for another 60 days to help try to get that to a better place, because there's some folks from the labor union to some county departments that didn't like the result that they had right now. And so in 60 days, we will come back as a court and vote on whether we do that plan that HR has come up with or do something else.
Of course, we can't talk about the budget without talking about the tax rate, and you all have a really unique situation this year in that you all are thinking about raising the tax rate higher than that 3.5% voter approved rate because of the disaster that we saw in Travis County. Walk through why you all are allowed to do that.
Yes, so this disaster, even though it was a very, comparatively to the whole county, it was a small square mileage area of the county, it was intense damage. We've got at least 60 homes that were destroyed, and either totally or partially, 100 structures. People's lives were lost. There were bridges and roads that were washed out, and there was a ton of debris. So the flood knocked down trees, cars, other things, and there's debris. Partially cleaned up now, but there was a lot of debris everywhere. So the biggest part of that expense so far has been the debris costs. And the county, in the debris costs and replacing some bridges and roads and staff time so far, has spent $17 million on that effort. And that includes, we had a reserve of $15 million. So we spent every bit of that reserve plus $2 million. We had to dip into, I think, our capital accounts for that, for capital construction projects. The state, TDEM, who's been a wonderful partner in all of this, has taken on some of that debris work. The costs are ongoing. They're going to probably get closer to $40–50 million for debris. So just that's a big expense for any disaster like this. We are also continuing to rebuild the Sandy Creek Bridge and other things. And so this funding, this one-time funding, so it would be an increase in people's property taxes for 1 year. It's not an ongoing thing forever. It would allow us to replenish the money that we spent on this for other future disasters. It would help us be in a better place if we have another disaster tomorrow, or a month from now or something like that, which is completely possible here in Central Texas. And it will allow us to look at countywide and see, are there low water crossings that are at risk of flooding in Sandy Creek or in other areas, and make improvements there? Are there places that have low water crossings that if we had the money to build a bridge, people would be safer? So it's things like that that we're looking at. It's all going to be disaster related, preventing future damage in disasters and recovering from this current disaster.
I believe it's $42 million that you all will be able to bring in total with that is the estimate. If you all have already spent $17 million and the money's out of the reserves and you need to replenish that, how much truly can you all do with that $42 million bucket?
Yeah, those are, for you and me, those are crazy high numbers. Right. For a regular person. For a local government that's responsible for building bridges that can cost millions of dollars, it's not, I'm sure there is more need countywide in places where we'd rather have a bridge than a low water crossing, or we'd rather have a wider road and sidewalks or things like that might help in a disaster than we have money for. But it will help us get to a better place, I think. As a comparison, we did a bond a couple years ago for $500 million that the voters voted on. $250 million went towards parks and acquisition of green space, and $250 million went to building roads and sidewalks and things like that. So road construction is extremely expensive in the county. And so this $42 million, obviously much less than that last bond we did that included $250 million for roads and things like that.
Of course, when people hear that their property taxes are going to be higher, you're always going to have folks who are upset. And you all have even gotten letters from Lago Vista asking you to not do this. If you didn't do this, what would that mean for the county in terms of its financial situation and how it responds to these floods?
It would put us in a very bad position. We had the benefit this time of the state being willing to help us, of us having money in reserves to spend money on the bridges and the reconstruction as needed. If we did not have that money in the future, we really would be stuck, because a lot of this funding, we're asking FEMA for reimbursements. We have done the same thing in the past. So I think from 5 years ago, we've asked FEMA for reimbursements related to the freezes, and we still haven't gotten all of that money back. And even if we do get it back, we only get 75% of it back. And frankly, given what this federal government is up to, cutting everything, there is no guarantee that we're going to get any money from FEMA in the future. Like, I hope and I expect, and I know TDEM expects, that FEMA is going to reimburse at that regular rate, but it takes so long and is so uncertain, it puts us in a real dilemma if we're like, hey, we need to hire a bulldozer, we need to hire a debris removal company. If we have no money to do that in the future, I don't know what we do there.
So let's dive into response to the floods then. It's a great transition to you all jumped right in and we're spending that money like right away.
Yeah.
Without those reserves, would you all have been able to have done that?
No, without depleting some other county service, really. I mean, so capital projects that I mentioned, building roads, things like that in parts of the county, I don't know how much leeway those have, but I know it's not a lot. And if we start cutting from other parts of the county government, we do things like we keep people, we fund the jail. The criminal justice system is the largest part of our budget. It's several $100 million each year. Really, we wouldn't be able to do that unless we cut something else out of the county budget. And that people, would not like that if we were like, what, we just don't have any money as a county to respond. I don't think that would be a good position. I don't think anybody wants us to be in that position. There is some good news, I think, that TCAD, so the Travis Central Appraisal District, it's an entity separate from the county. We appoint some board members, AISD appoints some, and the city appoints some. They determine the property values in Travis County, and they have because of a state law, they are allowed to give property tax exemptions to people who are affected by disasters. So if 15% of your property was affected by this disaster, you live in Sandy Creek, then you don't pay taxes. They have a formula for it, but it's basically from when the disaster hit forward, you don't pay taxes. You have to apply for it though. And the deadline is December 3rd. So go to the TCAD website and it has all the exact details of what you need to do to get that property tax exemption.
So let's talk about Travis County's response. Kind of initially when these floods happened, you and I were both out there together, but I want people to understand, because there's been a lot of misinformation about this. You all put together a timeline of everything that you all did, starting on July 4th to weeks out. Can you kind of walk through, from your perspective, what it is that you were doing while you were on the ground and out there?
Yeah, the thing that I'm very pleased about in those first few hours is, one, even before it happened, we sent a Starflight helicopter to Kerr County to help there. My understanding is it was the first helicopter on site and actually helped pull people out of the river there. I'm still learning to this day of all of the specific details of what firefighters did, individual stories of people they rescued, because as they're doing it, they're not writing it in a logbook. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to compile. But from that night, Blake, our deputy emergency management coordinator, was monitoring this entire situation. He sent a deputy sheriff's officer out there just around midnight or a little before, because the weather service was telling us that it wasn't that severe. He wanted to see for himself, so the deputy sheriff went out there, saw water was over the road. He reacted quickly and told the weather service they needed to upgrade their warnings to the highest level possible, which they did. And then once the calls started coming in for the flooding rescues, ESD1 took charge that same night, and they sent people responding to those 911 calls. The sheriff's department responded, Austin Travis County EMS, as they started getting the mutual aid response kicked in as well. So we had ESDs from every ESD across Travis County that night sending firefighters in to help rescue people. I've heard stories, the lieutenant that you interviewed that morning rescued a big family of 11 folks. I think it was like 6 kids, 5 adults that were there for the July 4th weekend, that had to go to their second floor, and he broke through their window on the second floor, got them all out. There are a lot of stories like that people haven't heard. I even heard a story the other day from Ashley, one of the residents there, that a couple of folks had washed down in the flood, and one was in a tree and one was grabbing onto something else, and they were there for some amount of time, and then at some point someone they thought was a police officer, but I'm thinking maybe was a Austin Travis County EMS just because of their outfits, put them in a boat and another couple of people and got them to safety as well. So yeah, I have no doubt that our first responders are working tirelessly that night. We looked at the damage, as it was coming in that day, Sunday, and then on Monday we said, TDM, we need more help for this. This is bigger than we can handle locally. And so they sent in their full IMT team, doing search and rescue methodically, using 14 different teams of dogs by the end. I think they had something like 500 people on the ground there at one point. So it was a big effort, and if you live out there, it's sparsely populated, so there are definitely people who did not firsthand see a first responder or did not see a dog team coming. And that's understandable because there's 14 miles of creek for both of these creeks. So I don't fault people who feel like they didn't see anybody and had questions about that, but I know for a fact that these first responders risked their lives to save, I think they did 50 rescues, I think is the official number. They're telling me 50 folks. And then the TDEM response team, the Travis County response team, Health and Human Services was there that first day, that Sunday that we were there at the church. HEB has been an amazing savior in all this.
Texas is FEMA.
Absolutely, they're just wonderful. And TDEM, I got to say, I've got political differences with a lot of things at the state of Texas, but TDEM is one thing that I'm so thankful for. And they were there. I was talking to them on Saturday, and they came when we asked them to come.
How, moving forward, you had talked to, when you were in front of state lawmakers, you said, well, we can do a better job communicating then to these people of what we are doing and when. Moving forward, how can you all do that to make sure that these impacted communities do know that you're there? Yeah,
I think there's several ways, and some, seem almost silly at this point, but like Travis County workers weren't wearing shirts that said Travis County. We didn't have a vehicle out there that clearly said Travis County. All these debris trucks that we were paying for had private vendors on them, and so people didn't know that was Travis County. TDEM was working for us. That's how it works in Texas. They come in at the request of the county judge, and so they're working for us. And just, I think, doing a better job for all those folks to identify who they're with. But I also think we need to have better comms just to the neighborhood. I think did a fine job of sending out press releases, talking to you and others, but I think more figuring out ways to talk to a community on the ground that maybe isn't watching normal media channels or the social media, things like that. I think we will do more of that next time.
It seems like this community is definitely one that has, a lot of them had lived there for decades, relied on each other for information, and once something got spread, it spread like wildfire, and it was really hard to tell people otherwise. How do you infiltrate after the fact when something has already gotten out there and is inaccurate?
That's a great question. So I went to a Homeland Security conference last week in DC, and it was all emergency management folks from across the nation that came, and went to a seminar on misinformation. And it's tricky, and it's getting more tricky. And I think one thing that they suggested was trying to establish ahead of time, that ways to communicate with people that they know and trust. Not to ignore misinformation, but to just kind of keep sending people to trusted sources like KXAN or the Travis County or things like that. But it is a problem. They noted that this is a growing problem everywhere, especially in the US, where people are free to say whatever they want generally on social media, and they certainly do. So yeah, I think trying to strengthen ties with trustworthy, established media sources, and trying to just strengthen ties with the community so that they understand where to go to get official information.
Well, one thing I've noticed is I think people, they say we don't want to pay property taxes or have government, but when a natural disaster happens, they want it to be one-to-one and someone to be there to helicopter them away. How do you get people to prepare themselves? The government cannot come be face-to-face with everybody moment one.
Yeah, it's a tough question, especially in a state like Texas that I think prides itself on having limited government and limited resources. So this region and a lot of parts of the county are areas where people go because there's lower taxes, they're not inside of a city, there's not as many rules as you might have in the city of Austin. But that comes with it. There's longer response times. If you call 911, you don't get the city level of response from law enforcement or EMS. It's just farther physically. Like when we had that school bus accident recently, I think first responders came very quickly, but they ended up sending some folks that were in the accident by Starflight to the hospital. What I heard, it was not because necessarily the severity of their injuries, it was just that was so much quicker to get from way out there to a hospital. And so when people live in those areas, there's a lot of great benefits. I love nature and being out in the middle of nowhere, but it does bring with it disadvantages when you have a disaster. And yeah, I've met lots of people out there who don't love government, but at the same time are wanting us to come out there and help them. And That's a tough situation sometimes to merge those two together.
You mentioned that bus crash. I noticed that Round Mountain Baptist Church was once again the reunification center, and you all have been working really closely with them. Maybe this is just a shout out to Round Mountain Baptist Church, because they have been like suddenly the epicenter of this entire community. Yeah. What's it been like working with them?
They've been great. The pastor there, I think I met him that Sunday morning when we were out there for the first time, and he has never said, I don't think has never said no to anything. Like he opened up the entire church, just sort of put everything else aside and let Kat and others set up the donations there that first morning and food, and there was someone sleeping in the chapel, things like that. And yeah, they've been absolutely amazing. They let, I think it was Fleurville that paved their parking lot so that we could put the tents and the showers and everything there. Yeah, they've been absolutely amazing, and I hope that people recognize how helpful they have been, and I hope that it's helped bring the community closer to them and others, just because they've been there for that community.
Yeah, that's a big shout out to them. They've been great.
Yeah.
Talk about what you all are doing now.
All right, with on recovery.
Yes.
So we have set up, not we, but the community really set up a long-term recovery committee. And this is something that I again learned at this, or saw, there was a seminar about the San Diego floods. There's floods in San Diego in 2024 at this Homeland Security Conference. And they went through their presentation about what happened and the recovery, things like that. And man, it was so similar to this. The sort of challenges and successes were very similar to what we're seeing here. And it's just in a natural disaster of this magnitude, there's so much destruction that it takes a very long time to recover. So my understanding right now, this long-term recovery group is focusing on approximately 60 houses that were demolished either entirely or partially, helping connect them with resources to get them rebuilt over time. Health and Human Services from the county has been out there since that first Sunday, but they're integral to this committee also to help people get rental assistance, food pantry services, things like that. We still have some folks in hotels that HHS is paying for. But the idea of this group is to not let people forget that there is a recovery going on here, and to be the partner of the community throughout this recovery. And if anybody's watching this and wants to help, we still need help through the Travis Cares fund through the Central Texas Community Foundation. That money 100% will go to residents and helping them rebuild. We also will need just donations of like roof shingles and building materials. And if they want to do something like that, if there's a company that wants to help with that, they should contact my office and I'll connect them with the long-term recovery group when that is needed.
You all are still out there regularly. What are you hearing from people, at this point?
It's just such a tough situation for people that, school has started, so people are trying to get back to it and things like that. But, every time there's a thunderstorm or rain, I think people have feelings that come back about that, and understandably so. There's been so many folks that are out there. There's this woman, Sarah, who has been out there from the beginning, that is still there every day helping people recover. There's a lot of challenges ahead. I think some people were living in a flood zone, and some of those properties cannot rebuild the way they were before. They either have to go up a lot or farther away from where the water could come, and that's a really tough situation for folks, especially that don't have the resources maybe to build something higher or different. My understanding is flood insurance, if people had it, and a lot of them didn't, but if people had it, they tend to want to rebuild the place just like it was before. So if you've had a change of the flood zone, that's a tough situation. So I think there's people that want to keep living there but are struggling with figuring out how to do so given the flood situation. There are people who are tenants out there that sometimes the landlords decided not to rebuild, so we're trying to help them relocate and things like that. But overall, there are a lot of, I think this did bring the community itself tighter together. I think they saw that they can depend on their neighbors in situations like this. And so if there's a bright spot, maybe that's it, and that it does seem like it's a tighter knit community than before.
We know that the natural disasters are going to keep happening at a probably quicker and more ferocious rate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What have you learned from this that you think personally people can take forward, because everyone is at risk at this point?
Yeah, it is tough, and I do think we're going to have more fires and probably winter freezes and floods than we have over the past 50 years. I think people need to be more prepared themselves to be without food, water, electricity for a few days, and so that means having some storage of water, food, medicines, things like that if you have a garage or an attic where you could store something like that. I think governments from the state of Texas to Travis County to local governments need to be ready to respond quickly and communicate that out. But yeah, it's tough, again, being in a state like Texas where it is so hard to invest in the things that would help lessen the impact of disasters if we did them ahead of time, like frankly giving counties more zoning abilities to say, hey, you can build in this area, you can't build in this area, you can build this type of thing, but you can't. A lot of times we can't do that as a county. That's reserved to cities often in Texas. Helping people, get just job training and get good jobs so they can have good houses that are more resilient to disasters is another one. Like I definitely believe the state and the government have a role in helping people get established and helping people who have mental health issues or have fallen through the cracks of society in some other way, helping them get on their feet and get established. And that's often a conflict I have with the state at the state level. They tend to, in my opinion, want to just have lower taxes and fewer services. But I think in disasters, that comes back to bite you if you've not invested in communities in the long run.
Well, I appreciate you being willing to sit down and have this long conversation. We've had a lot of really short conversations out in the field trying to get people information, but I appreciate you being willing to come and put it all in one place. Thank you for your time. Yeah,
and thanks for always being there. Every time throughout all of this, whenever we needed to get the word out about something or to talk about an event that was happening or to show that, to highlight, I remember that one story you did on the dog teams and how hard that search is and how long it takes. I really appreciate all the attention you've given to this too. Thank you.
That.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for watching. A reminder that Inside Austin's Agenda airs every other week, Thursdays at 3 p.m. We'll see you next time.